Hello students, this is a short video that's going to go through how to answer an importance question. This is just on the GCSE Superpowers paper. It will have a plan, it will give you an example paragraph, and then there's a couple of other questions that you can try if you would like. So this is a straightforward planning sheet that we can use for the explain the importance questions. You can see that there's a fruit machine and there are 3 spaces for 3 reasons why. And then over on this side we have our structure strip that goes through what we need to try and remember to do for importance questions. So if we first of all just break down the question, okay, explain the importance. When we have these ones, we see this one in exam only in the Cold War paper, but when we see this one, what we need to try and do is come up with 3 reasons. We want to come up with 3 reasons why, and we also want to try and come up with 3 paragraphs. Okay, so ideally we want 3 reasons and we want 3 different paragraphs. And the focus of the question is looking at the Grand Alliance, which is the UK, the USA and the USSR. Okay, it's the phrase we use to describe this wartime alliance that takes place between these 3 countries. And it's asking about why there is tension, okay, between the big 3, just another word for the Grand Alliance, in the years 1941 to 1945. So any of the post-war stuff is not going to fit in. This is all going to be stuff before this point. So if we look at our first icon, okay, we could think of divisions, okay, and the fact that there is a fundamental disagreement between the UK and the USA, who are predominantly capitalist, versus the USSR. Okay, and this is about politics, political differences around communism. Okay, so this is one way in which we see tension rising. Okay, because they have this disagreement between different ideas. The second thing we could think about is the conferences. So we've got people sitting around the table. What else do we know about what happens between 1941 and 1945? Well, there's multiple conferences that take place. Now, there's Tehran in 1943, but we're going to focus on Yalta and Potsdam, which take place in 1945. And the big disagreements, the way in which tension is rising as a result of this event, is the division of Germany. Okay, there's a lot of disagreement about who gets parts of Germany, how Germany is going to be divided, what parts of Germany goes to which other countries. And then we have the idea of Poland's borders, where Poland's borders should actually be, bearing in mind that the Allies went to war because to protect Poland's borders, so this is very controversial. And then the last one is this concept of free elections being held. Stalin has a very different idea about free elections to, say, the Americans. And then the final one, the atomic bomb. And this could also be another way in which tensions have risen. So we've got 2 reasons so far, and this is going to be our third. So we know that the USA used the atomic bomb twice to end the war. We know that they used it at Hiroshima, which is when they first dropped it, and later on in Nagasaki in August 1945. And we know that Russia had prior knowledge of this. So the Russians had prior knowledge, in part due to the spies. Okay, so this was another way that tension is created, because obviously the Americans think that they can sort of possibly push the Russians around because they have the atomic bomb, and the Russians feel like they know more than the Americans are anticipating that they know. So this is a basic plan for what we could write for this question about explain the importance of. We've got our 3 different reasons. The next video is going to go through how you need to write this up. So this is a still of that planning sheet so that you can see here we have our little fruit machine, we have our 3 different reasons, we've highlighted the most important things in the question, and then we've got our structure strip here that would guide us as well if we needed it. So the next thing we have to do is turn this into a 3-paragraph answer. This is going to be where I'm going to put some prompts, so things to help you think about how you structure your paragraphs. And then this is going to be where I'm going to write an example paragraph. And then you can either go on and practice the other 2 paragraphs, or there's a few other questions that you could try and bring into your teacher if you would rather. So the question's been written at the top, exactly the same as it would have been on the previous one. So it's been highlighted in the same way. The thing to remember is that we have to put in an opening sentence. Opening sentences can sometimes be really tricky because you've got to try and think of what to write, and sometimes that's not very easy. So the thing that you need to do about an opening sentence is, first of all, start with the same format each time if you're not sure. So you could start every one as one reason why, and that could be the start of your first paragraph, and then your second paragraph could be another reason, okay, for paragraph 2, and then finally for paragraph 3. Okay, and you can start using those starters for both the 12-mark explain why questions as well as this 8-mark explain the importance. The next bit is to just use some of the words from the question. So one reason why the Grand Alliance was important for increasing tension between 1941 and 1945. Okay, so here use the words that are in our question. Was that they were a flawed alliance. Okay, and this is the point that we're making. Okay, so not only do we want to have our opening sentence, okay, one reason why, okay, we then use the words from the question, and then we make a point. Okay, so the point we're going to make here is the idea of a flawed alliance. So we're going to make a point. And then if you're going to do this again, you would write another reason why the Grand Alliance was important for increasing tension between 1941 and 1945 was the impact of the atomic bomb, or whatever you were going to write. The next bit you need to do then is include your precise detail. And precise detail can be made of a mixture of different things. So it can be dates, it can be names, it can be statistics, it can be events, it can be terms. And sometimes it's going to be easier than others to find things that you could write that are precise detail. Okay, so there can be a lot of variation here. But let's write a couple of sentences. So Britain and America and Russia had allied to fight Germany, but they had fundamentally different views. Britain and America were capitalist societies, whereas Russia had been communist since 1917. This difference could be masked whilst they were fighting the Nazis. But once they no longer had a common enemy, this difference would be more pronounced. Now, the weakness, what we've tried to put in here is we've tried to put some precise detail. This paragraph is quite tricky to put precise detail into, but we have managed to put some in. So we have some key terms. We have the idea of a capitalist state. We have the idea of a communist state. We have 1917. We've used the phrase the Nazis. So there is something in here, even if perhaps this isn't the best example of something that is very precise. The final thing that we need to try and do then is we have to try and link back to the question. And often people forget to do this because it seems pretty obvious about why you have included all of this stuff, okay, but you have to make it really, really obvious. We have to provide a link back to the question. So what we could write, okay, doing a similar idea, taking the words from the question where we can. So therefore, by 1945, when Germany had been defeated, the fundamental differences, these fundamental differences inside the Grand Alliance became clear. This is why there was increased tension between the big three between 1941 and 1945. Okay, so therefore is a really nice linking word that we can use. Use the words back in the question to some extent, and then there's a really clear sentence that links back there. So hopefully that's given you some ideas about how you can write these paragraphs and the sorts of features that you need to try and include. So here is a still of the paragraph that's been written out. You can see the colour coding and you can see that the way it has been structured.